answer some of those questions. When you move downstream in that value chain, some of the issues of collaboration that we have to do with intellectual property rights and respect across the boundaries for intellectual property rights issues. We have issues of counterfeiting, you know very well about that, but beyond that, we have issues of disrespect of other aspects of intellectual property rights. Indigenous knowledge systems, for example, they're not seen as legitimately part of the IPR system. Genetic resources that various countries have, those are also not seen as part of what is sovereignty depending to belonging to a country and needs to be protected. And so reforms around the IPR that get to respect other forms of intellectual property and get them as part of the intellectual property rights regime will help us advance quite a lot. There are a few examples from my country where IKS has met very well with formal knowledge in the laboratories, and they've created a pharmaceutical industry that is global. And one example is a plant called Hudia, which was researched by the scientific research laboratory in South Africa, and the patent was assigned to a US pharmaceutical industry. And that plant is used to suppress hunger. And the diet industry, in all the diet pills, you'll find that substance in there. And that's the benefit that has accrued from that has been shared with the community. And so we need to relook at how we're looking at IP and other parts that globally we see as falling outside of that. I know those discussions are done at length at the WTO and WIPO, but as a collaborative mechanism, we need to look at, I guess, beyond the formal IP regime.
Boni, could I ask you, because you described there building what I might call your basic infrastructure,
Yeah.
the idea of innovation hubs, incubators,
Yeah.
introducing the basic intellectual property laws, etc.
Yeah.
Starting off there in terms of collaboration, where did you look to for guidance or models, and where did you find some that were interesting?
Yeah, that's, as I was thinking about this discussion, it was interesting that what helped was that the OECD in 2007 had done a review of the national system of innovation in South Africa. But they found us on the path of trying to address some of the challenges that they identified. We couldn't go to one body and get the lessons from various parts of the world. We had, on each of these parts, to go to, on the IPR Act, we had to go to America to look at the Bayh-Dole. We had to go to Canada to look at their policy that they had implemented in 1965 that did not work. We had to go to Japan. We had to come to some of the EU countries and look at their models. And we then looked at the South African context and we looked at the best lessons and we came up with our legislation. But it could have been faster if there was an organization that sits with all these lessons and is able to share the lessons with the
So you're saying finding best practice was a tough job?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Because there wasn't someone to hold your hand on that journey a bit in terms of, we talked earlier, I think, about having a basic knowledge inventory.
Yes.
And you were saying in a kind of a way you found it hard to find that.
Absolutely, yes.
Let me ask you one other thing, if I could, before I move on, and that is the question of kind of brain gain and brain drain. When you're developing a policy at home in South Africa and you're looking at prospects for collaboration, how does this play out in your national debate about these hopes that you have the brain gain element, so synergy and something positive, or fears that you end up, in fact, losing your best people through collaboration to go somewhere else?
We've decided to extend the network. In some of the initiatives that we have on the R&D side, we've decided to work with South Africans that are elsewhere in the world. So you're looking at that African diaspora and you're working with that diaspora where they are. So it's, you're leveraging the knowledge where it is. And that's why I talked about 2 levels of building a national system of innovation. There's a very strong component of globalizing the understanding of the role South Africa can play and understanding the dynamics, global dynamics that will influence the South African national system of innovation. And the issues of human capital that could help us deliver on some of the objectives that we have is at the center of that. And we're looking at various strategies. Obviously, the PhD program that I spoke about, we're looking at research chairs, and research chairs are in South Africa, and we have research chairs that are not in South Africa, that are contributing towards what we call grand challenges. We've decided to focus because we can't do everything, and we've called the areas that we're going to be looking at grand challenges, and they're talking to climate change, energy security, space science and technology, biotechnology and biodiversity and IKX nexus, and human dynamics. And we're focusing our resources there. So we have researchers sitting elsewhere in the world that are contributing towards these grand challenges for the country. And that's the way we think we can resolve the brain drain, brain gain issue by networking our programs globally.
Boni, thank you very much for those introductory remarks. Next, I'd like to turn to Jan Muehlfeit, who's chairman of Microsoft in Europe. It's really the same question, I guess. For a technology company and an innovative company, it would be interesting to hear a private sector view and an industry view of this question of the capacity for the worth of and the practice of global collaboration, rather than focusing on a more down-home focus.
Well, thanks very much. Good morning. I will first reflect 2 points on a reflection on the previous session. If the innovation can help in the crisis, my answer is definitely yes. If you take Finland in '91, my friend Asko, who used to be the prime minister there, he shared with us the story that the Finnish GDP '91 was declining 7%, 15% unemployment. They cut all investments but education and innovation. And today, as we have heard from Andy in the previous session, it's not only universities, but if you look at the PISA study again, secondary schools, they flourish, and the innovation system in Finland, I think it's one of the best in the world. That's one point. The other point is on what Klaus said about the knowledge ecology. I'm using the term intellectual playground, and as a matter of the fact, there's a Richard Florida, who is a Canadian professor and who is also the ambassador of European Year of Creativity and Innovation. And what Florida is talking about, he figured out that there are 40 mega cities, mega regions, among them London, Cambridge, Stockholm, Zurich. But in those mega regions, that you find 18% of the population, 2/3 of the GDP, but almost 90% of the innovation, based on the patents. And he's saying that world is getting spiky, right? And he challenged himself, what is the cookery book to be one of those mega regions? And he talks about the 3T strategy. First T stays for talent. You need to have ability and capacity to keep your own talent and attract talent from abroad. And here he talks about 2 countries which did excellent job last 10 years, and that will be Australia. We had our guest from Australia, and Canada. The second T stays for technology infrastructure, and the third T stays for the tolerance in terms of the openness. And I think here Europe can use a lot. We have very diverse continent, and I think we can use it in our advantage.